What was intended as a message of inclusion of all religious beliefs, was interpreted as a message of exclusion, especially for the LGBT community. Nothing could have been truer or further from the truth, but it was clear that the perception had to be addressed.
Welcome back to the Arena. Veteran journalist and the founder of JaneUnchained.com, one of our favorites, Jane Velez-Mitchell, joins us from New York. And the president of M Network Branding and Strategy, the man for all brands, Thom Mozloom, joins us here in the studio. I should point out that as we begin, and Jane, you should know this as well, that Thom actually sent out a tweet today where he said, for everybody that I'm about to offend, please, I apologize. And he did that even before the show, so just so you know.
Including you, Jane. Including you. I'm very sorry.
Braced for it.
I'll try not to offend either.
Please, no, go right ahead. We're equal opportunity offenders here. That's what we enjoy, as a matter of fact. Let's go ahead and start in Indiana, but let's start on something a little bit different here. Pat Robertson. First of all, Jane, let me do this. Let me say the name Pat Robertson to you, and let me just get your general consensus and your general first opinion.
I watched what he had to say. And I'm embarrassed for Pat Robertson.
Okay, then let me...
I believe he's in his mid-80s. It's time to resign. It's time to step down and step out of the public spotlight.
Then let me get to it. Pat Robertson warned that the backlash on the anti-LGBT law signaled a renewed assault on America's sexual practices and deeply held Christian beliefs. But he said, this is about cake bakers, is what he basically boiled it down to. Look, I understand there's probably people out there who watch and enjoy Pat Robertson, but I think, quite frankly, the man needs to kind of let it go at this point. This is about more than cake bakers. That's a ridiculous assumption to make.
Well, it is more than cake bakers. However, the man owns the network on which he was speaking. If you don't
you
like
would have
what
to go to
he
logic,
says,
wouldn't you?
Listen, both of the people who watch that network should turn it off. It's just that simple.
Haven't we, though, gotten to the point, though, and whether those two people are watching or not, but this is the trivialization of this. Whether you are on either side of this, Thom, this is trivializing this. This is almost making it about something that this is not about. It deserves a lot deeper discussion from both sides.
Well, this is a huge point. And when you listen to Pat Robertson and Mike Huckabee and other Christians speak about against this, it's really apropos that we're talking about it today on Good Friday. It's important to remember that as Christians, Jesus Christ came to this world not to change laws, but to change the world, to transform hearts and transform minds. And his tools was not legislation, it was love and understanding and acceptance. If we bury ourselves in in low-minded discussions about the law, we're going nowhere. If we base Christianity on what is right and what is wrong based on the law, we're doomed as a faith and we're doomed as a society.
Well, and you mentioned Mike Huckabee, and Jane, let me bring you in on this because of, here's Mike who says the gay community won't rest until there are no more churches. I think what Thom says is right, especially on Good Friday. We're having this kind of a conversation here, and this kind of rhetoric doesn't help either side.
Look, as a member of the LGBT community myself, I say keep talking, Mike Huckabee and Pat Robertson, because you are essentially digging your own graves. You're showing homophobia in all its vileness. Now, Pat Robertson, I have to single out because he's giving the Westboro Baptist Church a run for its money. He actually said, essentially equated oral sex and bestiality and said that gays would force aberrant behavior, including oral sex and bestiality. Now, I would bet the house that most oral sex is practiced by heterosexuals. So essentially, he called every heterosexual in America who's ever practiced oral sex somebody engaging in aberrant behavior. That's sheer lunacy, and I think all Americans should be offended by it. Offended by equating, certainly, being gay with being involved in bestiality. That's highly offensive. But then he goes even a step further and says anybody who's engaged in oral sex, it's equivalent to bestiality. Has he lost his mind?
Well, people have the right to say things that are offensive. You have the right to say things that are offensive to me, and I don't think we should legislate or censor people based on what their opinions are. And I certainly don't want to shut these guys up, just like I don't want to, listen, for starters, I don't believe Pat Robertson and Mike Huckabee speak for Christians.
Okay, stop right there for 1 sec. Jane, 20 seconds. Go ahead, and then we got to take a break. To you.
Well, listen, I think that Jesus Christ was a wonderful man, and there are a lot of things about him that I admire. And I really find it offensive that somebody who is virulently homophobic would say that I speak for Christians. How dare he?
I think that probably puts it very well in what a lot of Christians and people I've talked to on the left, right, and in between are all said as well.
But that kind of talk shuts down high-minded conversation, and
Hang
we need
on.
to open those dialogues.
More high-minded conversation coming up
Well,
with
not
Jane
from us.
Velez-Mitchell and Thom Mozloom, well, except for Thom because he actually admits it. Coming up right here on The Arena. Welcome back to The Arena. First all in New York, a veteran journalist, the founder of JaneUnchained.com, Jane Velez-Mitchell, and here in the studio, the president of M Network Branding and Strategy, Thom Mozloom. All right, Jane, I'm going to start with you on this one. Now, let's talk about polls for a minute here, because we in the news business, we are inundated with numbers all the time. Here we have a Fox News poll saying Scott Walker's jumped to the top of the GOP field. Clinton emails are bad judgment. We're told that Jeb Bush is dropping in popularity. Jane, you probably can't see this, but can we literally just take it like this, and you can probably hear this, and just throw it and get rid of it like that when it comes down to these numbers because they don't mean a darn thing?
Exactly. This is flavor of the month talk. And talk about peaking too early for Walker. I think that's exactly what's happening. And I'd like to say that as we enter this political season, it's time to really start talking about more than just the game of politics. If I could get in for 1 second that our two-party system is archaic and it needs to be replaced. You can't take 300 million plus people and put them into two boxes and say, choose this or that, with both options being irrational, and the millennials aren't buying it. It's really not a 21st century solution. We need to reinvent politics to make it solutionary, not a zero-sum game where it's just entertainment. Who wins, who loses, who wins, who loses.
But how do you
We've
do
got
that, though,
political
Jane?
gridlock.
How do you do that, though?
More
because
parties.
there's a two-party
If
system,
I
so
had
how do
to
you
say-
start that?
Well, it starts with money.
Get rid of the two-party.
It starts with
Get
money. You
rid of
can't
the
just-
two-party system.
But where do you go
Add
from there?
more
Okay,
parties.
Who arbitrates that, Jane?
Okay.
Do you
If
step in and
I
just
were
make you the
to
czar and you
identify
go say, no more
myself-
two-party? You can't do
No,
that. Listen,
but let's open a dialogue. God didn't decree two parties. Our political system is evolved, and it needs to keep evolving into the 21st century.
The only way that's
we're
gonna happen
a
is to
typewriter
inject-
of a political system instead of a tablet.
I hate to interrupt.
No, go right ahead. You were saying the only way. Go right ahead.
The only way that that's going to happen is to inject new blood into politics, and the only way new blood gets in there is if new money gets in there. Politics is run off money. You know why these polls came out? They're not tea leaves saying who's going to predict the future and who's going to win. It's useful for us to talk about, but more than that, it's useful for these candidates to go raise money. Look, I'm leading. Give me money.
Okay, great
But it's the
idea.
same
Wait a minute, but
pile
you're
of
also-
You
money.
have given me the best argument for what I'm saying. We have a corrupt political system where we have a legally but morally corrupt system where money talks and voices of reason are silenced if they're not backed by huge amounts of money.
I think
if
you
I had to
completely
self-identify,
misunderstand me.
I would.
I think you completely misunderstand me, Jane. I'm not giving you an argument. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just paving a way that actually shows where to go. I think we do need a lot of people.
Well, wait a
this
minute.
isn't something we disagree
I'm
on.
going to stop you both here, though, because it's fine. And Jane, I understand what you're saying. Tom, you're right. Okay, we need a new political system. We need to get some more new blood in here. How?
People need to get more active
Well,
in
let me
politics.
say this. If I had to self-identify, I would self-identify as a green libertarian. In other words, capitalism is fine, but let's not destroy the environment, create climate change, and torture millions of animals in the process. If you do no harm and extend rights to our nature and to other sentient beings, I say you can have all the capitalism you want. Now, where
But
is
Jane,
my
that's a
viewpoint
great idea, but you
reflected
know that that's not
anywhere in the
logical
political
right now.
system?
You know that that's not a
Sure it
starting
is.
point.
Wait,
But that's
let's-
not a starting
Wait,
Let me go with,
rationality
okay,
isn't
I'm a
ar-
green libertarian.
Rationality isn't logical?
No, I didn't say rationality isn't logical,
okay.
but let's start somewhere. You have a two-party system that basically runs everything. How do you then start to morph that, create something else? Just have people get involved? But where do you go from there?
You change from
Create
within.
more
You get
boxes,
people
create
on the
more
inside.
options.
You create more opportunity from the inside. You start recruiting people at a younger age, getting them more involved in politics. Civics
They
class
don't wanna
is
get
dead
involved, Tom.
Because there's no future for them. There's a cap. When you
They're
run at a
disillusioned
local
because
level,
they
at the
don't believe in
PTA,
Democrat
it's
or
somebody's
Republican.
turn.
Well, but are they also disillusioned, Jane? Because, and again, when you said civics, that comes right away to one of the things that I've always talked about. We don't teach anybody civics in school anymore. We don't teach them in grade school. We don't teach them in high school. It's completely missing. It's like physical education used to be exercise for the body. We don't exercise the brains
Because
anymore.
politicians aren't public servants
I
anymore. They're
disagree with
winning
you.
popularity contests.
You do? Okay, go ahead. You disagree how? Why?
I disagree. I think millennials are far more sophisticated than we give them credit. And one of the reasons they're disenfranchised is that they recognize the game, the cynical, corrupt game, for what it is. That essentially agencies of government controlled by corporate interests, which really amounts to corporate socialism, run everything. And who's elected matters not, because they're under the thumb of the lobbyists. Everybody knows this. You look at any hit show, whether it's House of Cards or Homeland, it's the same story throughout. The gig's up with this two-party joke.
Yeah, but it's also, the gig is up because the millennials understand that those guys don't do anything. The rest of us out here in the real world, we live our lives despite what the politicians say. They could pass as many laws and bicker as long as they want. I'm still going to run a company the way I want to run a company. You're still going to run a company the way you run a company. And every once in a while, what I want to do and what you want to do collides with those bozos.
All right, stop right there because I got to take a break and come back. But again, I like the fact that we're opening it up here, but I still want to get down to how we get started and how we actually move that. I still think we need more civics lessons in school. That's okay, just me.
Are you advocating for violent overthrow?
Stop right there, young man. All right, Jane Velez-Mitchell and Thom Mozloom come back. Third part of this segment of The Arena returns. Let's continue in The Arena. First of all, from New York, veteran journalist, founder of JaneUnchained.com, Jane Velez-Mitchell, who, like me, has a real care for animals. We're going to do that story one day. And the president of M Network Branding and Strategy, Thom Mozloom, joins us here in the studio. Tom, I'm going to start with you here. Let's go ahead. We got a few things to knock out. In Kansas, they now have a law that will allow concealed guns to be carried without a permit. Excuse me, we're running into a little bit of a difficulty here, don't you think?
I'll be anxious to see how that turns out for them.
A gun with no permit with some of these people. And I'm somebody who was raised in a gun family, and even I think that's foolish.
Listen, I'm a gun owner. I think that it's okay to own a weapon. But when you look at the statistics and you say that as many people die from gunshot wounds as people in automobiles, maybe we should think about what we do with automobiles and treat them similarly.
Last time I register the gun. Nobody was holding a trigger at the steering wheel.
That's one big giant trigger on the steering wheel and on your right foot. Trust me, automobiles are just as dangerous and more people have them than guns.
All right.
However, we register the vehicle and we license the owner. And I don't think that that is out of control. However, I do have fears about Second Amendment rights, that people should bear arms. You should have the right to bear arms.
But do you think that people need to register the gun?
Well, if it was
yes or no? It's a yes or no question, Thom Mozloom.
While Thom Mozloom thinks so, Thom Mozloom also respects states' rights and says that if this is what the good voters and politicians of Kansas want, let them have it and let's see how it goes.
Okay, Jane, to you.
Well, first of all, if I was a police officer in Kansas, I'd be very worried because now it's open season. Anybody can carry a gun. They don't need training, and who knows what's going to happen. So the brave law enforcement officers who have to go out there on the street, I pray for them that they're okay. Let's talk about the Second Amendment. There's a slight issue here, and that is that the Founding Fathers were not aware that disturbed teenagers with automatic weapons would be slaughtering people in shopping malls and movie theaters because back when the Second Amendment was created, there were no shopping malls, movie theaters, or automatic weapons. I think we have to realize that technology and the advances in weaponry have to be reflected in our laws. And so we've essentially given a mini nuke to every disturbed teenager whose girlfriend has broken up with them and given them open season to go out and kill a bunch of strangers. That's not a rational system. Again, we need a solutionary approach.
Jane,
where we take the emotion out of it and look at solutions.
This line of thinking is both irrational and misinformed. When the Second Amendment was put into place, everybody had a gun. The Second Amendment merely said you should keep your guns so that you could fight off and defend your own home when the militias can't get there. The second part of your argument is, I fear for the police officers. You're assuming that cop killers go out and register their guns now. That's a ridiculous proposition. We're not writing these laws to protect cops from criminals. No, what I'm saying is there's going to be a lot more people with guns. I'm talking about drunk people at a bar with guns. I'm talking about people who have a fight with a spat with their loved ones in a parking lot. You know, this is That's sort of my point about automobiles, Jane.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just saying we got to be careful. We already have more guns than the number of people in the United States, it's estimated, or around that amount. I mean, what do we want to do? Arm everyone and have the good guys and the bad guys shoot it up and see who's left standing at the end of it? Is that really where we are in the 21st century?
No. I think the gun laws and having a Kansas law is fine as long as it is balanced by just as severe punishment if you handle a weapon irresponsibly. And that way you will have both sides of the deterrent on the punitive side for handling a weapon poorly. However, we're going to see. The state has made its decision. I think it's going to be a great test case. And what would happen, to your argument, if gun crime actually went down in Kansas? Then where are we going to be?
Well, but there have been a lot of
that's a
cases
big
where people
if.
have licensed
That's
weapons and gun crime has gone down.
Let's create a false scenario and say, what if? No, we don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, I would hope that would happen, but I have no guarantees it would happen.
All right.
We'll come back shoot it.
Okay, we're going to move off the what ifs now because, and by the way, coming from a gun family, I think everybody should have one registered because there's too many whack jobs out there who have able to get their hands on guns. That's another story. Here's one now. There's a new powder coming out this summer. Can be mixed with drinks to liven up parties. It's called Palcohol. And some states have already banned this product because basically it puts alcohol into water. People are going, kids can get a hold of it. Some people are saying the media is just all knee-jerking about this. What do you think, Jane? Put a little alcohol in your water? Gee, what a great idea to start your summer fun.
Well, as a person who just celebrated my 20th anniversary of sobriety 2 days ago, I don't think it's a great idea. Thank you. Alcohol is a disease, and I don't blame people for succumbing to that disease, but I think we shouldn't make it ubiquitous, and to put it in the water supply would be very dangerous indeed. So I think that there is need for some regulation, although as a green libertarian, I would say that if we could figure out a way to have it available, just like we have now increasingly pot available, and there's certainly alcohol available everywhere, you're not going to stop people from using by trying to limit the access. Prohibition
yeah, but can you at
taught us
least
that.
limit the access to kids, though, maybe? Because here's on the FAQ on the site, imagine a margarita on a counter, and then imagine if you could snap your fingers and it would turn into powder. That's Palcohol. Come on.
Okay, so...
Yeah, but you could also easily take a bottle and pour alcohol. I mean, it's the same thing. It's no different. It's just powder instead of liquid.
This is just a different delivery system for the drug alcohol.
Exactly.
And if you have a problem with Palcohol, then you also have a problem with e-cigarettes, which is just another delivery system for nicotine. You regulate this exactly the same way you regulate alcohol. We're a grown-up nation. We can do this.
E-cigarettes don't cause cancer, though, the way regular cigarettes do.
No,
so
but e-cigarettes do. E-cigarettes,
there's
still, the studies are out on e-cigarettes as to exactly what they do cause and what's involved in them because there is still a drug involved in them.
No,
yes?
3/4 of people who actually use e-cigarettes also use regular cigarettes. So it's not weaning people off of cigarettes. It's actually creating a higher addiction and causing them to smoke more.
Okay,
That's
so
a
real
bad
quick,
thing.
they only got a couple seconds left. Would you buy Palcohol?
Sure.
How about it, Jane? Would you want to go out and get yourself a six-pack of Palcohol? No, wait it. I know you won't.
I
I'm sorry,
certainly
that's right.
wouldn't. I don't even buy any
I remember
alcohol
that's
for
right,
any
you didn't.
reason for anybody.
Good for you. All right, and that was a bad question for me to ask. I completely forgot. But again, that comes from the guy who's going to celebrate
okay.
That comes from the guy who's going to celebrate his birthday this weekend by having a couple of drinks. But that's another story altogether.
You are an
Thank
insensitive
you.
heel.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad you said that. Coming from you, that's a
See, I'm
compliment.
sticking up for you, Jane.
Jane Velez-Mitchell, thank you so much. Always a pleasure, Jane. We'll talk to you
you.
soon. Thom Mozloom, always a pleasure. You didn't insult anybody today.
Well, we'll find out.
We'll find out very soon. All right. Stormy end of the work week. Some tornado warnings for parts of the country. Hopefully the sun's going to find its way out for the rest of this weekend. More, let's turn to Jessica Reyes with your Newsmax weather update.
Hey there, I'm Jessica Reyes with your weather from coast to coast. We'll start by the northwestern portion of the country where showers are pretty much the big story for today. A lot chillier for today as we move by the Great Lakes, but partly sunny for the most part, so no rain through there. But speaking of rain, showers and thunderstorms, actually severe weather through the Tennessee Valley. It's pretty much stalled within that area, so the further inland you go, the more storms we are expected to see for our Friday. Not so much by the coastline, with temperatures ranging between the upper 70s and lower 80s. Now, speaking of rain, to kick off Easter weekend, we're dealing with some of that across the northeast as well, especially into parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey, and even into parts of New York. And speaking of Easter, if you have any outdoor activities planned, here are some of your weather. Here's some of your weather for that day, and also here are some of your daytime highs to kick off the weekend.
Like that, looking better around the country. Here comes summer before you know it. Up next, we open up the second half of the arena. The Iran nuclear agreement. Those who say that the president is naive and those who say that he had to get something done. Also, then there's the pitch to Congress coming up. And here comes another issue. Do we really need a return of the X-Files? It's coming up on the arena next.